Mitchell Harper had lived in Cypress Hills for over a decade. A quiet, wooded corner lot, front porch swings, coffee at sunrise. It wasn't paradise, but it was his. Until the morning a silver SUV pulled into his driveway, and a woman in heels, too high for common sense, stepped out like she was storming a runway. She didn't knock. She strutted. "You Mitchell Harper?" she asked, already holding a clipboard like it was a warrant. He nodded, confused. "This home's been reassigned. You'll need to vacate by Friday." At first, Mitchell thought it was a prank. Reassigned. What is this? Jury duty for houses? The woman didn't flinch. "This home was sold last week. You missed your appeal window. I'm Karen Whittaker, president of the Cypress Hills HOA." Funny thing, Mitchell never joined an HOA. And yet, here she was claiming his house had already been sold without his signature. She handed him a packet, stapled like some cheap rental agreement. "Transfer finalized. You're trespassing now." He didn't yell, didn't slam doors. He just walked inside, locked them all, and sat down. His name was on the deed. His father had built this place with bare hands. Something didn't add up. By lunchtime, Mitchell was on the phone with the county recorder's office, and that's when his stomach dropped. The property had been sold. The deed had been transferred. On paper, it no longer belonged to him. But he'd never signed a thing. No one had. Someone had forged everything. Someone had walked into a government office and stolen his house, and Karen was treating it like it was Tuesday. Before the sunset, Mitchell called a friend, one who used to wear a badge and now wore a federal one. Whatever Karen had done, it wasn't just wrong. It might have been a federal crime. So Mitchell did the only thing a man could do when someone tries to erase your life with a pen. He decided to fight like hell. But what he didn't know was that Karen wasn't just targeting him. She'd done it before. And every time, she walked away richer. This time, she picked the wrong house. If you think it ends here, you're wrong. What Karen did next pushed Mitchell to the edge, and you won't believe what was really behind her authority. Don't go anywhere. You'll want to see how deep this fraud runs. The next morning, Mitchell Harper stood in front of the county clerk's desk with trembling hands. He wasn't a paranoid man, but this wasn't a bad dream anymore. His name had vanished from the deed records like it never existed. The new owner? A company called Greenlight Holdings LLC, based out of Delaware. He'd never heard of it. He hadn't signed a single page, and yet the documents were signed his name, perfectly forged. A notary's seal he didn't recognize. And on the seller's line, a signature that looked suspiciously like Karen Whittaker's. Mitchell snapped a photo of the transfer. The notary stamp number was fake. The witness listed was deceased. Literally, he found her obituary online within 10 minutes. He turned to the clerk. "This isn't a clerical error. This is theft." The clerk gave a careful shrug. "You'll need to take it up with the HOA." There it was again. That cursed acronym. HOA. Karen's magical shield for everything she touched. She threw that title around like a badge. But Mitchell had checked, there was no official HOA registered with the state. He wasn't just being cheated. He was being erased. Meanwhile, across town, Karen wasn't just celebrating. She was redecorating. She brought a young couple from Phoenix through the house Mitchell still lived in, and described it like it was her personal urban empire. Original hardwood floors. Beautiful view. "We've had some delays with the previous occupant, but he's just squatting. Happens all the time." Mitchell caught them mid-tour, standing on his front lawn. "I didn't authorize this," he said, stepping down the porch steps. "This house isn't for sale. You're trespassing." Karen raised her sunglasses slowly. "We're just finishing a showing. This will all be cleared up soon." Please don't make it worse for yourself. Mitchell smiled. Calmly. It's already worse for you. He had a hidden mic recording everything. And that couple, not buyers. Private investigators Mitchell hired the moment he sensed Karen was playing a bigger game. The woman pretending to sell his home had just walked into her own trap. He uploaded the audio to his blog and linked it to a new YouTube channel. My house, not yours. Within 24 hours, it hit 80,000 views. The comments poured in. That Karen's a full-on con artist. She just sold a house with someone still living in it. This needs to go viral. That's straight up fraud. But the best part? A retired notary from 2 states oversaw the video and reached out. The signature on Mitchell's forged deed matched 3 others from another HOA fraud investigation cases that had mysteriously vanished after Karen's cousin, a clerk, had retired early. Mitchell wasn't just fighting a petty thief. With a clipboard, he was facing someone who'd been perfecting this scheme for years using fake paperwork, shell companies, and the illusion of HOA power to quietly steal property. He called his federal contact again. This isn't just forgery, Mitchell said. This is interstate wire fraud. She's using the mail, faking notarizations, laundering property titles. The reply was simple. Send everything you've got. That night, as the cicadas screamed and porch lights flickered across the neighborhood, Mitchell sat in his truck watching Karen pace outside his house on the phone. She was yelling, furious. She knew she'd finally messed with someone who could burn it all down, and the fuse had already been lit. They'd tried to take his home, but now he was going to take everything she built. Karen Whittaker always walked like the pavement owed her rent. But for the first time in a decade, she was sweating. Mitchell Harper had made a mistake, a fatal one for most victims of HOA bullies. He didn't roll over. He fought back. By the end of the week, Mitchell's YouTube video had crossed 200,000 views. Viewers from all over the country flooded the comments with stories of their own HOA nightmares. Some even sent him documents, HOA fines, lien threats, forged signatures, all traced back to the same woman, the same P.O. box, and the same 3 names on the HOA board: Karen, her cousin Ronnie, and, curiously, Winston. Mitchell thought Winston was a liar at first, until he saw the HOA's annual board photo posted on their own website. Winston was a cat. Literally. A big orange Maine Coon in a tie, sitting in a lawn chair next to Karen and Ronnie. Mitchell nearly choked on his coffee. She wasn't just a fraud. She was delusional. Karen had been running this entire HOA like a con artist running a casino. Fines were arbitrary. Appeals were impossible. Her board was a joke. And the worst part, she used fear like currency. Mitchell started reaching out to his neighbors quietly, carefully. He met Jennifer Turner, a single mom who had been fined $200 for excessive kid noise and had almost lost her home when Karen slapped a lien on it. Then came Daniel Myers, who was forced to remove his backyard shed even though it was on his own land because Karen claimed it violated line of sight tranquility standards. Where'd she get that term? Mitchell asked. Daniel laughed bitterly. She made it up, like everything else. The stories were endless, gut-punching, infuriating, but also useful, because with every name, Mitchell was collecting witnesses. He compiled dozens of accounts, audio recordings, HOA newsletters with outrageous fines, drone footage showing Karen trespassing. Even Ronnie, her cousin, had posted TikToks bragging about evicting whiners. Mitchell packaged everything into a 94-page file and labeled it Whittaker HOA Scheme, Organized, Civil Theft. He sent it to his federal contact, CC'd the State Attorney General's office, and, for good measure, posted a teaser online. Karen lost her mind. Within hours, she was on Mitchell's porch again. No clipboard this time. Just her, sunglasses, and a shaking voice that tried to sound firm. "You're harassing me. I'll file for a restraining order." Mitchell didn't flinch. "Go ahead. Just be sure to bring your imaginary cat board member to testify." Her mouth dropped open. "And while you're at it," he added, "you might want to lawyer up. The feds just received a file with 24 homeowners naming you in a fraud conspiracy." She sputtered. "I am the elected president of this community. No, Karen. You're the self-appointed queen of a fake HOA that's about to collapse." She turned and stormed down the steps, but Mitchell noticed the tremble in her heels. She knew, and it was only getting worse. The next morning, Mitchell's mailbox was stuffed with anonymous manila envelopes, each containing documents, internal HOA emails, fake violation templates, even invoices showing payments from Greenlight Holdings LLC directly to Karen's personal PayPal account. Someone inside her little empire was flipping. It was Ronnie. A single message came with the final envelope. She said, "Winston's vote outranked mine. I'm done." Mitchell laughed so hard he nearly cried. The house was still his. The fraud was coming to light. But what came next, no one was ready for it. Because Karen was more than just a local scammer. She was tied to something much bigger. She'd been selling properties across state lines. Dozens of them, each through a fake HOA network she created from scratch. One was in New Mexico. One in Alabama. All sold to the same parent company, Greenlight Holdings LLC, which traced back to a small office in Miami, registered under a dead man's name. Karen hadn't just forged a few papers. She was running a multi-state fraud ring. And now, the federal government was watching. Karen just didn't know it yet. But she'd find out soon in a way that would make national news. Karen Whittaker had spent years playing God in Cypress Hills. She built her authority out of thin air and ruled like a tyrant behind HOA letterhead and phony legalese. But now, her own cousin had turned on her. The neighbors were organizing, and Mitchell Harper had become a local legend. She just didn't know the walls were already closing in. Mitchell met with Ronnie in a rundown diner just off the interstate. No cameras, no phones, just two men and a pot of burnt coffee between them. "She told me Winston could outvote me," Ronnie said again, shaking his head. "A cat, man. A freaking cat." Mitchell leaned in. "You helped forge those deeds," Ronnie nodded. "She gave me templates, said no one would ever check. We target homes with owners who didn't fight back. Divorcees, retirees, out-of-state landlords. One signature, a dummy notary seal, and boom, we'd flip the house through Greenlight and cash out." "Why help me now?" Ronnie looked away. "I saw your video. You're not like the others. You're not scared. And the truth is, she threatened to put my name on the next fake sale if I didn't shut up." Mitchell slid over a USB stick. "Everything goes to the feds tomorrow. But I want her caught in the act." Ronnie nodded. "Give me 24 hours. And just like that, the trap was set. Meanwhile, Karen was in full damage control. Her HOA newsletter, now sent only via personal Gmail, warned of domestic threats and accused Mitchell of hacking into board communications. But the neighborhood wasn't buying it anymore. Not after Mitchell had published 36 fake violation notices Karen had mailed out over the years. One resident had been fined $900 for grass hostility. Another had been warned for using a visibly emotional lawn gnome. People were furious, and when Mitchell hosted an emergency town meeting at the local church, nearly every homeowner showed up. They weren't there to talk. They were there to vote. In one night, the fake HOA lost every ounce of support it had. By unanimous voice vote, the community rejected Karen's authority, dissolved all local HOA dues, and filed a formal petition with the county to deregister the HOA entirely. But the real blow came the next day. Ronnie sent the signal. Karen had called a secret meeting, her version of an emergency board session, at a rented office space just off I-30. Mitchell's contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office had already wired the place. Karen showed up in a red pantsuit, clutching her infamous clipboard, and launched into her usual jargon. "We have to reassert control," she snapped, the narrative slipping. "Mitchell's viral, Ronnie's gone rogue, and if anyone asks about green light, we delete everything." Got it. She didn't know her voice was being recorded. She didn't see the two quiet men in the corner of the room were federal agents. When she offered to pay a cleaner $10, $0 to wipe HOA hard drives and shred records in the back of her storage unit, the agents stood up and showed their badges. Karen froze. "You're under investigation for mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate theft," one agent said. Karen stammered. "You don't understand. I'm the president of the HOA." "No, ma'am," the agent replied. "You're the architect of an interstate fraud ring, and it ends today." As they cuffed her, Karen screamed across the room, "You can't do this. I own this neighborhood." But she didn't. She never did. She had tricked, lied, and intimidated people into believing it. She had convinced them she was untouchable, until Mitchell said no. Until Ronnie flipped. Until the feds kicked down the door. By sunset, the neighborhood was swarming with news vans. Karen's mugshot was already making the rounds on social media, and Mitchell's YouTube video, it crossed 1.2 million views that night. The story wasn't just local anymore. Karen's face was now plastered on federal documents. Her clipboard had been seized as evidence. The storage unit, full of HOA records, forged fines, fake deeds, and a framed photo of Winston in a graduation cap. No one would forget her. But this wasn't over, because buried inside one of the shredded folders was something worse: a list of other HOAs in 3 other states, all linked back to Karen's email and the same Delaware shell company. Mitchell looked at the agent. "You're telling me she ran the same scam across state lines?" The agent nodded. "And it looks like someone bigger may have been funding her." Karen had been the face of the operation, but now it looked like she was just a pawn in a much larger scheme. And Mitchell, he wasn't backing down. Not yet. The final chapter of Karen's downfall was still to come. Karen Whittaker's mugshot had barely cooled before news anchors across the country were saying her name. From local morning shows to primetime crime segments, the headlines were merciless. HOA president sold homes without owners knowing, faces federal fraud charges. Clipboard queen of Cypress Hills faces 15 years. Karen's notarized nightmare unravels across 3 states. Inside the courthouse, reporters jostle for camera space. Karen arrived in a beige pantsuit, this time her signature red one, confiscated as evidence. No sunglasses, no clipboard. Just the tight-lipped grimace of someone who finally realized the show was over. Except for one thing, she still thought she could win. She had hired a flashy, out-of-town lawyer who swaggered into the courtroom like it was opening night on Broadway. His defense, denial, confusion, and deflection. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, grinning, "this is a case of misunderstandings, disgruntled neighbors, and a man named Mitchell Harper who clearly has a personal vendetta." Mitchell sat in the front row, unbothered. Karen's attorney called the HOA fines reasonable administrative policies. He said Greenlight Holdings LLC was an investment group, assisting with local property restoration, and the notary fraud, a clerical error, he claimed. But what he couldn't explain was the evidence. Ronnie's full testimony laid out the scam in detail. Signed affidavits from 22 neighbors told the same story. And when prosecutors dropped the smoking gunna, direct email from Karen instructing Ronnie to push through deed transfer by Thursday. I don't care how you sign it. The jury leaned forward. Then came the kicker. A financial audit revealed Karen wasn't acting alone. Funds from the HOA accounts had been wired to multiple shell companies, all connected to an offshore banking network in the Cayman Islands. The investigation widened. Karen had been working with two men who had since disappeared, former developers, who had been kicked out of multiple cities for zoning irregularities, and one of them had used the alias Paul Greenlight. Greenlight Holdings LLC had never been real. It was a front used to launder stolen property across state lines under the disguise of fake HOA transfers. Karen wasn't just running a scam. She was the face of an organized crime syndicate. But here's where it got personal. Mid-trial, prosecutors unsealed a storage unit in New Mexico tied to Karen. Inside, they found duplicate HOA documents from another community. One of the names on a fraudulent deed caught Mitchell's eye, his mother's. She had passed away 5 years earlier. The house had since been sold legally, but the records showed Karen had tried to claim the deed once, then backed off when probate attorneys got involved. Mitchell clenched his jaw. He had thought this was about his home, but Karen had been watching his family for years, waiting for the right moment. The courtroom went silent when he testified. She didn't just steal property, he said. She studied people, looked for weakness, waited, then acted like she had the right to everything. Karen wouldn't even look at him. The jury was done. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, mail fraud, real estate theft, racketeering, conspiracy, obstruction. But the judge wasn't done either. He read the charges aloud, then paused. I've seen a lot of scammers in my courtroom, but this was cruelty wrapped in bureaucracy. You weaponized neighborhood trust and turned it into a racket. He sentenced her to 27 years in federal prison. No parole. All assets seized. Her accounts frozen. Her fake HOA officially dissolved. But just as the bailiff turned to take her away, Karen looked over her shoulder and muttered to Mitchell, "This isn't over. You still don't know who you're messing with." He didn't respond. But in his gut, something stirred, because behind her words, there was a hint of truth. The scam was dead. Karen was buried under years of prison time. But whoever ran the bigger game, the men who disappeared, the ones funding Greenlight, they were still out there. And Mitchell wasn't done either. Because if Karen was the pawn, someone else had to be the king. The courtroom doors had closed on Karen Whittaker's downfall. But Mitchell Harper wasn't ready to put his feet up. Something about the case still didn't sit right. One rainy afternoon, as he sifted through the mountain of evidence Karen's team had tried to bury, Mitchell stumbled on a folder marked simply Project Lighthouse. Inside was a tangled mess of emails, bank transfers, and property deeds, but one thing stood out. A name that kept repeating, Carter Reynolds. At first, Mitchell thought Carter was just another HOA victim. But a quick search revealed something else. Carter Reynolds was a high-level contractor for the Department of Defense, overseeing real estate and construction projects on several military bases across the country. Why would Karen's HOA scam touch a federal defense contractor? Curiosity turned to alarm when Mitchell discovered multiple properties tied to Carter had been sold through Karen's fake HOA network. Not only that, several of those properties bordered sensitive military installations. Mitchell's heart raced. Could Karen's scam have been used to quietly flip or gain control over properties close to national security sites? He called his federal contact, urgency in his voice. "We're not just dealing with fraud anymore," he said. "This could be espionage." The agents moved fast. Mitchell was invited to a secure briefing where intelligence officials explained that fraudulent property transfers near military zones could threaten national security, especially if the buyers were linked to foreign entities or shell companies. And that was exactly what Greenlight Holdings appeared to be. A front for laundering money from unknown international sources. As the investigation expanded, Mitchell became the unofficial consultant, guiding federal teams through the HOA paper trail he'd helped expose. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Late one night, Mitchell's phone buzzed with a warning. "Someone's watching you." The message read, "No name, no number." The next day, his truck was keyed outside his house. Windows rattled with every knock. Unknown cars circled the neighborhood. Mitchell realized the fight had gone beyond HOA corruption. Karen was in federal prison, but the real players were still out there, and they didn't want him digging any deeper. He tightened his security and doubled down on public exposure. His YouTube channel posted updates daily, calling out suspicious properties, questionable shell companies, and urging homeowners to stay vigilant. His following exploded. One message stood out from AW. "Whistleblower inside Karen's network. I have files you need," the anonymous tipster wrote. Names, payments, connections to Reynolds and others. "But be careful. They're ruthless." Mitchell arranged a discreet meeting. The files confirmed the worst. Karen had been the visible face of a vast real estate manipulation scheme, funneling money and properties to covert interests tied to Carter Reynolds contractors, and possibly more shadowy organizations. It was no longer just a fight for his home. It was a battle against a clandestine network operating under the guise of HOA management. Mitchell's next move was clear. He planned to take these revelations public, exposing a conspiracy that could rock not just Cypress Hills, but the entire country. But as he prepared for a press conference, a chilling call came through. "We know what you're doing, Mr. Harper. Stop now, or you'll regret it." Silence. Mitchell stared at the phone. The stakes were higher than ever. Mitchell Harper knew he was in deep. The warning call had rattled him more than he'd admit. Someone powerful wanted him silenced, and they weren't messing around. He spent the next days in a whirlwind updating his YouTube channel, meeting with federal agents, and watching his back. The first attack was subtle but chilling. His front yard fence, once sturdy, was slashed in the dead of night. Spray paint smeared across his garage door read, "Stop digging or else." Neighbors whispered about strange vehicles parked near his home, license plates from states he didn't recognize. Still, Mitchell refused to back down. He posted a video titled "The Truth Behind HOA Fraud. They Want You Silent," urging homeowners everywhere to stand firm against corruption. But the threats escalated. One evening, as Mitchell returned from a meeting, his truck refused to start. A quick inspection revealed the fuel line had been cut. When the local police arrived, they were sympathetic but cautious. "We'll keep an eye out," they said. But these things are hard to pin down. Mitchell knew he needed a plan. He arranged a public press conference to expose everything he'd uncovered: Karen's scam, the shell companies, the shadowy figures behind Carter Reynolds, and the growing federal investigation. The night before the conference, a stranger slipped an envelope under his door. Inside was a single, chilling photo: Mitchell's daughter playing in their backyard, taken from across the street. No note. No signature. Fear mixed with fury. He wasn't just fighting for his house anymore. He was fighting to protect his family. But giving in was never an option. The next day, cameras rolled as Mitchell stood before a crowd of reporters. "This isn't just about one man's home," he said, voice steady. "It's about a nationwide scheme of corruption hiding behind HOA rules. People like Karen Whittaker are just pawns in a bigger game." And we're going to bring the whole network down. The media frenzy exploded overnight. Federal agents launched coordinated raids across multiple states, arresting associates linked to Karen and Carter Reynolds. But the fight wasn't over. That same night, Mitchell's home was broken into. Nothing stolen, but his personal files, the evidence he'd gathered over months, were gone. Someone was cleaning house. Mitchell realized the enemy wasn't just watching, they were striking back harder than ever. Desperate, he reached out to a cybersecurity expert to secure his data and track the break-in. What they uncovered next was terrifying. The intrusion was sophisticated, likely state-sponsored. The attackers had left digital footprints that led back to offshore servers. This was bigger than HOA fraud. This was a cyber war. As Mitchell prepared for what could be the final confrontation, he received an unexpected ally. Ronnie, Karen's cousin and former accomplice, showed up at his door. "I want out," Ronnie whispered, "and I have information that can end this for good." Mitchell agreed to meet, cautiously optimistic. But as they sat down to talk, a sudden noise outside froze them both. The shadows had arrived. In that moment, Mitchell knew exposing the truth might save his home, but it could cost him everything else. The air was thick with tension as Mitchell, Harper, and Ronnie sat across from each other in the dim light of Mitchell's living room. Outside, the night was eerily quiet to quiet. Ronnie leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "There's one person behind all of this. Not Karen. Not me. Someone much higher up. Someone who doesn't just want your home. They want control." Mitchell's heart pounded. "Who?" "The real boss," Ronnie said, glancing nervously toward the window. "Carter Reynolds." The name hit like a punch. The federal contractor. The man whose name Mitchell had seen in the evidence. The man tied to offshore accounts and shadowy property deals. Ronnie continued. "Karen was just a pawn. A means to an end. Carter's been using fake HOA letters to launder money, flip properties near military bases, and move his assets undetected." Mitchell clenched his fists. This was bigger than anything he imagined. A multi-state conspiracy with national security implications. Suddenly, headlights flashed outside. Voices murmured. The shadows were closing in. Mitchell grabbed his phone and texted his federal contact. "They're here." Within minutes, agents in tactical gear swarmed the property. Doors burst open. Voices shouted commands. The final showdown had arrived. Carter Reynolds was caught in the act at his Miami office, surrounded by stacks of fraudulent documents and ledgers detailing years of illicit transactions. Back in Cypress Hills, Karen's name was officially removed from every property record she had touched. The HOA was dissolved, and homeowners reclaimed their land and peace of mind. Mitchell stood before the neighborhood a hero, not just for saving his home, but for unmasking a dangerous criminal network. The last twist, Mitchell found Karen's infamous clipboard buried in the rubble of her storage unit, the same clipboard she used to sell his home. He placed it in a glass case at the new community center, now named Harper Hall. A plaque beneath read, "For those who stand when others fold." As the sun rose over Cypress Hills, Mitchell smiled, knowing his fight wasn't just about property, it was about justice. And the message was clear. No one is above the law, not even a hoakaren. If you enjoyed this story, like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable HOA battles, and remember to stand up for your rights. Have you ever had an HOA nightmare? Drop your story in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant.